Port Richey's council meeting for January 28th, 2020. At this time, I would invite Sandra Spaldi for our invocation.
God, our creator of all there is and ever shall be, we ask you to shine your light down upon our city. We ask that you guide our mayor and council to make the best decisions for the highest good of our city and our residents. We ask for your blessings for our country. We thank thee. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Todd McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella. Let the record show that Councilman Tom Kinsella is absent from this meeting. City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Vincent Lupo.
Here.
Thank you. At this time, I was looking for a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, I'd like to address the general public and allow some time to speak for some of our citizens. I'd like to start with Pastor Leonard Lord.
Thank you, Mayor Council. Leonard Lord, I pastor at 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue, and right now I just like to ask the Lord to give peace to Tom and those out there, and watch over them. I know He's wants to make sure it's all okay. So Lord bless him. I just want to thank all of y'all for last year to begin with. I really want to thank Claudia Smith and the committee for the times we met and all they did for the Christmas program. It was great to have them out decorate and meet 2 o'clock in the afternoon and get all the gifts all set up and everything. So I really want to thank the city for the council, the meeting, and partnering together. I think it was a great time. And of course, Volunteer Way had so many gifts, we were able to send a lot back. And so we thank the Lord for that and the graciousness of the chief. I mean, he's got called out to his job here, but the fire department, the police department was there just so gracious and everything in order and serving. And it's just great to work together and see the Lord put the city together and work together. So just want to thank y'all for all that. Looking forward to this year. Now, of course, what's going to be coming up is our Easter egg hunt. Will be the 11th, I believe it is, April, the day before Easter. And so we'll be working on that. As most of you know, it's kind of a carnival atmosphere with games and prizes until they divide up into age groups and go hunt the Easter eggs with prizes and all. So we have food and a good time there. So we're looking forward to that. So I'm sure we'll be meeting. And also, it was good to have the mayor and his lovely wife and James and Nancy, and of course Tom Kinsella and his wife was there at the banquet. But thank y'all for coming out. It was an encouragement to have you there, and just want to let you know that we're here to serve you. My studying the scriptures is we need to know what y'all need so we can help you do it, because that's our job, to make our community better, and that's what the Lord wants. Matter of fact, the word about Jesus coming is that he would be a blessing to all nations. So that's what we're called to do. Also, let you know the taxes will be at Light of the World this year. And so Bill Colombo, they'll be starting on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays during the tax season. So if anybody needs their taxes, it'll be in our fellowship hall. He came over and met with us, so that's worked out. So if we can help anybody there, send them over. And as I'd say before, when we redid our fellowship hall, it was to serve the city. So as I said, no wild drunken parties. We want it peaceful and order, but we want to be here to use it and help y'all. So thank you, and Lord bless you, and we're praying for you. And may the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Lord. The next person that was signed up is Susan Sullivan. Welcome, Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you. I live at 8721 Old Post Road, and I moved here from Ocala, Florida in June. I have some concerns about Avila Bay townhomes, or what they have become, and where are we going with it, with the city? somebody answer that?
What I'd like to do is hear all the comments and concerns that you
Oh,
have.
okay.
And then we have a chance to address all the comments.
Okay.
But we normally handle that all at one time.
Okay, I want to know who the new owner is of Villa Bay. I want to know how many units are going to be built, how long to completion, and is there anything being slated to fix or repair the road, Old Post Road? The trucks that come in there are destroying the sidewalks. When they pull in, they can't swing wide enough. And I was actually fearful they were going to back into my driveway a few times. So I had to watch that. The amount of traffic, has that been slated? What's happening with the traffic pattern? What my suggestion would be, and what you guys need to discuss, can we put some speed humps in the road to slow people down? The speeding is crazy on that road. Yes, yes. So we want to see what's going to happen. And is there going to be an on-site manager for that complex? Because if there's no on-site manager, it can get very unruly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. The next person I'd like to invite to the podium is Troy Peterson.
Hi, Pastor Troy Peterson, Church of Brotherly Love, 6827 Sander Drive, Port Richey, Florida. I also serve with Pastor Leonard Lloyd, and I also wanted to thank you guys for everything you're doing, first off, for our city, and for particularly the Christmas party in the park. That was such a blessing to be a part of that. And then even, the way God works things out, I believe God's called me here. I didn't figure that I'd probably be involved in coming and speaking in front of mayors and stuff like that, but God's connected us to work together to make this city better. And even running into Chief Tim that morning there eating breakfast, I continually get blessed with food, and this time happened to be a bunch of presents that I was able to take over there. So what God is showing me is that I'm here to serve you guys, to help you guys out in any way that I can, and to pray for you and support you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And the last person that we have that signed up is Mr. David Mueller.
How's everybody doing? Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Thank you guys for doing a fine job up there. I appreciate all your hard work as well. And I pray for you guys every day. Let you know that I stand on God's word also and pray for you. What I'd like to do is just make a couple of comments. Last 2 weeks ago, we talked about a project update. Still, the website has no project update, but I'm hopeful that our city manager is going to show something tonight. Praise God. I'd also like to know what the status is on our financial audit for fiscal year 2019. It's been about 4 months. I'm sure something's underway there. Maybe we can get a progress report on that. I'd also like to hear an update on the BP grant with Pasco County, where we stand with that, as well as any other options to look at dredging the problem areas in this community. I'd like to also note that I'd like to know where we are with an assessment on the infrastructure, pipes and drains. That's something that probably we need to be forecasting forward and looking at opportunities there as that ages out. If we just understand where we stand with it, we can plan for it rather than let it run us over. Sound on the YouTube. I see you guys are working on this, and it's always been good in this room. When the upload's done, you can't hear anything. I went back and listened for a couple of months, and the period of time on 11/20 and 11/26, the sound was fine. Whatever happened after that, it went downhill in a hurry. I'd also like to give you guys an opportunity to maybe make some changes, and I'm going to suggest a couple items that potentially a city manager's agenda be published with the agenda as well ahead of ahead of the meeting. Perhaps a lot of the things that are being asked are answered in that line as well, and it'd probably give you a better idea of what's going on. Also, Mayor and Council, you guys should be asking these questions. And, you know, you need to hold our city accountable, and let's get results. I mean, we haven't done anything with the dredging really since the June meeting. We were going to have meetings and go forward there, but appreciate if you can make some changes and potentially reorder the public maybe after the city manager's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. At this time, that's all that's signed up, but I see there's a lot of people here. Does anyone else wish to speak that's not signed up? Come on up.
Dave Parker, J.D. Parker and Sons, 6724 US Highway 19, Newport Richey. Just came in tonight to give an update on a situation that's been ongoing with one of the residents on, I believe, Shoreview Court. We are one of the garbage providers in the area. Been servicing that neighborhood for the last 30 years or so or better. Not too many complaints. I know we have one resident who's had issues with the hours of pickup. I have been working with the chief and letting him know what is going on, what I'm trying to do to find a middle ground to kind of alleviate the problem. We are no longer going down Shoreview Court at all with any of our trucks at any time of the day. And I am personally monitoring the neighborhood at that time of night to make sure we're not doing anything more than what we have to do. Like I said, I'm trying to find a middle ground because I do have many, many customers in the neighborhood that are happy with our service and the time of the day we pick up. So again, I'm just here tonight to just give an update on that. So that's where we're at. All right, thank you.
This time I'm going to see if there's anyone else that wanted to speak before we move on to the city manager and council. Thank you. At this time I'm going to pass it over to our city manager, Mr. Lupo.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll pass out, if you will, please, sir. Tom. It's a newly updated project list. It contains projects, costs, start, end dates, and statements about each project through administration, building departments, utilities, and all the various departments. It is also being published on our website, so citizens can view it and provide suggestions, if you will. And I assure you those suggestions are taken to heart. What many of the citizens don't know is that each week we provide city council members with a complete synopsis on a weekly basis of the activities of every department. This is a generalized project list that has many of those activities with some other specifics for the general public's use and understanding, and to provide clarity to some questions that are general in nature, and at the same time to show complete transparency. With respect to an overall budget statement, we have our budget analysis completed and passed out. We are at approximately 33% of the budget year, if you consider 4 months, October 1st to the end of January. That's about 33%. An average at this point in time, we have expenditures in approximately the 29% range. So we're basically heading in a proper direction with respect to utilization of funds and husbanding of funds. We have several other projects we've undertaken, particularly to address some long-standing problems in Palm Harbor. And we've spoken to some of the people in Palm Harbor to resolve those two major issues that we're aware of out there. We also have a project that Mr. Uhas, our new Public Works and Utilities Director, has undertaken with respect to repair of some critical drainage issues out on Davis Street. And there are many other activities our new Public Works and Utilities Director has undertaken, including some of the analysis and future projections that Mr. Mueller had just talked about. Infrastructure analysis, infrastructure longevity, projections of future growth. So Mr. Uhas has taken a firm hand with respect to that. And what I'd like to do right now is, that's the completion of my statement, is just simply introduce again Mr. Sean Uhas and give us a brief thumbnail of what's happening over in our Public Works and Utilities Department.
Thank you, Mr. Lupo.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council. Most of you have seen me in the first meeting. This is my second, so I've made it almost 4 weeks there. I came from Hillsborough County, was public utilities there for 16 years. What we've got going on right now, just a thumbnail of Waterside Park. We've done tree removal. We're putting back the playground. As some of you already seen, we've got the center tower on. We're working that ongoing. We're looking for a projection of that. If I can get a hold of a contractor to do the ADA soft landing, we're hoping to get that by the end of February, if not the 1st of March, and get that up and running. It will be ADA accessible. Coons Road, we did the park. We did the build-up to keep the roads from going into the pond. So we put shell down there, compacted it. We also have, I believe 2 weeks, we have the mangrove cutting down Coons Road. We're actually going to, we have the gentleman there, we're actually going to be cleaning the ditches at the same time. Davis Road drainage, that was brought to me 2 weeks ago. That affects Sunset, Limestone, and Davis Road. We've gone back in there. There are swells and drainage ditches that used to be there that are no longer there. I'm going to be getting with the homeowners to make sure that they have no problem with us getting on the property. That start date should be approximately 3 weeks. It should take no more than 2 weeks, so it should be done by middle of March at the latest. I want to get done before the rain. I have my crews out locating valves. Main reason being is I've heard horror stories from my crews of turning entire sections of the town off because nobody to do a water repair. That's unacceptable in my eyes, and especially if you folks, if you've got a leak somewhere else and you're out of water for 8 hours because we have to shut everything off. That's unacceptable, 100%. I'm working with the fire chief here. We're designing the hydrant testing, so you will see flows. We are working to get what they call a hose monster, basically, so we don't damage anybody's yards. We are doing this. This is mandated by the state. We will do it every time, same year. Right now, we're just getting all the parts and pieces going. I have five more lift stations on SCADA, which helps us because we can see what's going on. We don't have to run out in the middle of the night. Marina Palms, the sign was that somebody decided they had to have was replaced, and the storm drain was repaired. And we're looking to service you folks as fast and as efficiently as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
One other thing, Mayor, there was a comment made about our efforts with respect to the speakers and the microphones and the effect on YouTube. We believe we've resolved that issue, and you'll certainly will bear that out when you go home and replay YouTube. So I'm sure that has been taken care of, at least I've been assured. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to turn it over and make some comments, and then I'll pass it over to council, and then Mr. Matthew. I wanted to address the Avila Bay situation. I know there was some questions about Avila Bay from Ms. Sullivan. I know that one of the issues that came up are some of the construction trucks and equipment that have been brought through. Our roads really aren't built or designed to facilitate those size vehicles. And I think that the police may have checked into that at some point. So that's something we're aware of and that we're dealing with. So it's certainly on our radar, and I don't want you to think that it has gone unnoticed. The other thing, and I think one of the things that our council has done is we've recognized with the incoming residents that'll be coming into Avila Bay will change the traffic pattern in that particular area, which we've already voted to start engineering and planning to do the Ritchie Road extension, which should alleviate some of the issues that you're going to see precisely where you live. So we've already started to address those issues hopefully before the traffic gets any worse in that area, and alleviate the intersection of Old Post and Bay Boulevard right there is a big concern in terms of whether or not they're going to sell versus rent, and that's something that we're still working on with Avila Bay. So there's been some contact there, and just so as well as the general public. Before I was mayor, I can't say that I ever really paid much attention to what was going on in the city. Since I've been mayor, on a daily basis, I'm riding around the city to see what changes are made, what's going on with staff, where the flooding areas are, where there's road problems. So I take a lot more, pay a lot more attention now that I've taken this position. So I drive to Brasher Park with my 8-year-old son on a daily basis. So I pass that area, and I see what's going on over in Avila Bay. So I understand those concerns, and we've addressed some of them. Mr. Mueller, I touched on some better reporting, and that the mayor as well as council should be in better contact with discussions with city manager. A lot of that happens not with other council members, but with city manager, chief of police, and utilities employees. I spend a lot of time with all of those folks, fire department, getting to know each department and keeping track of what's going on and trying to provide some ideas that may help. So while that's not visible all the time, that certainly goes on. The other issue I wanted to bring up, one of the things that is going to start to happen in our community, in large part with discussion tonight about the Waterfront Overlay District, we're going to talk about traffic upgrades and things that we may do to improve that area. But one of the things I think the city has faulted in the past, which I'm hoping to try and change, is I think a lot of times people have good ideas on what to do in the city, but the real big issue is funding. I think there's going to be some discussion tonight about traffic pattern and what we want to do down in the waterfront area. One of my concerns is the funding and how we're going to fund that, which is where I'm going with this. Is originally we had a school plan to go in where we would have had some impact fees, which would have helped to defray some of the funding for some of the projects down there. With that potentially falling through, one of the things that I was asking the city manager and staff to do for future meetings, for a future meeting, one of the ideas that I had that I don't know if we can do or not, but I want to put on for discussion, is whether or not we can tax the businesses in the Waterfront Overlay District, the penny tax for sales tax, and use it specifically for sidewalks and roads down there, which will defray some of the costs to the people here that live here within the city. So that's something I wanted to explore with discussion at council meeting down the road, because I would like to see improvements down there, but I certainly don't want to tax our citizens as much as I can. And I think that some of the businesses and consumers down there should bear some of the cost of some of those improvements. So I would like to see whether or not that's feasible and at least have a discussion about it. So I was asking Mr. Lupo to put that on for future discussion, maybe in the next meeting or two, just for discussion and where that may or may not be able to go. Other than that, that's all I had for today, and I was going to pass it on to our council members. We'll start with, to my right with Mr. McCleary.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
I'm just fine, thank you very much.
I have a few items, and Mr. Mueller and I were on the same page, happen to be, talking about infrastructure, which I've been in talking to Vince about. We want to be ahead of the game on this. We have one of the lowest water rates in the entire state, and this infrastructure is going to cost money. So it's something we're going to have to look into the future is possibly raising some of our water rates. We are the lowest. That also goes to our millage rate. We have a dire need for vehicles in the police department, fire truck. We have a lot of things coming up. We've held the millage rate for several years now. So we all have to start considering, all of us too, because we live in the city as well, start considering that we may have to use some of those things. I think the water is a big one. We are by far, right, Vince, the lowest in the state.
Yes, sir. Council has not raised rates over the last 3 years. They had it in place, a system where they would have raised rates over 4 years, 5% per year. From fiscal year 17, 18, and 19, we have not raised the water rates at all. They remain absolutely stable. During that time, we've been able to increase our water production. We've been able to improve the quality of the water. We are continuing to make repairs. In fact, we'll be fine, as is on your chart. We'll be redoing some of the filters, and as you clearly pointed out, and as was mentioned earlier, we're beginning to do an analysis of the future needs, current assessment and future needs of our infrastructure for not only water production, but water distribution. So yes, sir, water rates will be a point of discussion, a deep point of discussion during the budget cycle, as will other potential funding sources that you may be interested in, as suggested by the mayor.
That's all I had for that. The rest I'll save for old business. Thank you.
Yeah, and at this time, I wanted to pass the pulpit to our city attorney, Mr. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everybody's aware, I cannot, as a city attorney, I cannot bring an ordinance unless council agrees, for first reading. We had a meeting this morning with Mr. Foss as well as the county, and there's certain time frames, so absent any contrary advice from the council, hopefully by the next meeting, if we can get all the details done by next week when the agenda's ready. The issue is that every 5 years, FEMA changes their maps, okay? And the last time I think we did this was in 14, Dallas. And so there's technical changes so we can keep compliance and keep our CRS rating up, which is what keeps our insurance very low for our citizens. And we don't want to miss the deadline. We got plenty of time, but I just don't want to miss it. So we went over the finer details. We should have that finished by Friday, hopefully, and I'll bring it for first reading. Mr. Foss will be able to answer your questions. It really doesn't affect anything, but it's become a tad more stringent on building going forward in the city. So we're good with that. So is everybody good? All right, so you'll see that, and we'll explain it before the first reading. Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on? Seeing no hands at this time, I wanted to move on to the consent agenda. I was looking for a motion.
Approve consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, I wanted to move on to council business. The first item up for council business is going to be the discussion of our waterfront overlay district and the traffic study. At this time, I'd like to pass it to Mr. Lupo.
Mayor and council and citizens, for discussion is a presentation by Mr. Robert Kersey of Tyndall Oliver regarding the options for traffic patterns within the waterfront overlay district. Tyndall Oliver has worked with the city before. It has aided the city in understanding what our traffic needs have been, what they are, and what they will be projected in the future. We made an initial attempt to address some of the traffic in the waterfront area, and to to that end, we have requested that Tyndall Oliver take a harder look, a closer look, and to come forward and present to council and the citizens the possible courses of actions along with the recommendations. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Robert Kersey. Sir?
Thank you very much. I believe I'm mic'd up here. As Mr. Lupo introduced me, I'm Rob Kersey with the firm Tyndall Oliver. I am a principal in the Tampa, Florida office. Mr. Lupo and staff asked us to do, as he stated, a review of the waterfront overlay district and what's going on with some of the traffic patterns and one-way traffic as it currently exists within the area. The presentation that I've put together today actually gives an overview of the study. We discuss existing conditions. We'll cover what we went over in 2018. As he mentioned, we've done previous work within the area. Going to review some of the potential alternatives within the area and present some recommendations, and then spend the balance of the time really digging down with you and talking about some of the alternatives and answering your questions. Tyndall Oliver was hired about 2 years ago. In 2018, we did a study within the area, specifically in the waterfront overlay district, addressing the parking issue. It was kind of coinciding with the opening of Whiskey Joe's, which was putting a lot of additional parking demand in the area. So we assessed not only the on-site parking availability at Whiskey Joe's, but also overflow parking and where additional parking for businesses in the area could take place. A lot of successful businesses in the area. All the parking cannot be handled on-site, so some of it had to go off-site. We took a look at that. Coincidentally, also, we looked at the time with the Avila Bay and some of the other developments in the area, and we measured the travel demand and the impact that those developments would have when they came online. And one of our recommendations from that study 2 years ago was to extend Ritchie Drive. So I'm glad that the city is moving forward with that recommendation. I do believe it will address some of the issues that are arise from that development coming online. What we really looked at, though, within the waterfront overlay district the first time was really parking, safety within the area. We looked at the existing infrastructure, cataloged all that. We took a look at some of the crash history. We did traffic counts, and we looked, of course, at the land use within the area. Our recommendations from that study really had to do with sidewalk extensions and gap closures. By gap closures, I mean gaps in the sidewalk, making it more continuous. One of the things that was evident in the area is once you take a lot of the parking off-site from a lot of the businesses in the area, their customers have to walk to the venue. And most of the roads in the area are maybe 15 to 18 feet pavement to pavement. So with two-way traffic and pedestrians walking in the street, it does cause issues. One of our recommendations, you can kind of see it in the line there, is the green line that was the extension of the sidewalk on Old Post all the way down to Treadway, west on Treadway, over to Bayview, and then all the way south down by the Catches Restaurant. And what you see in the photo on the right is what the city did do. I would like to think it's based upon our recommendation, but it was good planning and programming by the city. What you actually see there is the sidewalk that is on the west side of Bayview. So that really does help. What that left, though, was the gap and what to do with Treadway. So let's get to the present day and what we were asked to look at here. We were asked to look at the existing conditions and the impact of the existing one-way operational change that was made on Treadway, what impact that would have in the area. Also take a look at any other options that you could possibly have in the area for traffic circulation and safety. In general, we looked at 4 alternatives that I'm going to go through, and we do provide recommendations specifically to kind of address safety, but also traffic circulation in the area. What you see in the photo in the upper right where it says no left turn was the treatment as it existed about a week or two after you went to one-way operation, with the no left turn signage there. And the picture on the bottom you see there is actually looking eastbound on Treadway. The Pirate Bar is on the right and Gill Dogs is on the left. You see in that instant we got a shot of pedestrians walking in the roadway. And if you've ever been in that area, you realize that there's not a lot of room for the pedestrians to get off of the road. There's no additional right-of-way there. And for the city to go in and purchase it, specifically on the north side, would probably be quite expensive. So leaving the only current option of people walking in the street. So, taking a look at existing conditions here, just to get you oriented, because all these alternatives are going to have this, this kind of our base map here. The only real option for one-way traffic within the area are the 4 roads that comprise the square. And the square is bounded on the south by Cody Avenue, on the east by Old Post Road, on the north by Treadway Drive, and on the west by Bayview. Under current operations, you see about approximate to the entrance Hooters, you now have one-way only northbound on Bayview, and then one-way eastbound on Treadway out to Old Post. That is your current configuration. The red dots there show where you have stop signs within the area. That was effective sometime in December, I believe. So it's been approximately about 6 weeks. As far as alternatives, obviously there is the alternative to turn it back to what it was before, take it back to two-way traffic. So that is one of the alternatives that we looked at. It would eliminate any business concerns that are in the area for access. Obviously, business owners are concerned about access to their property. Whenever you change a traffic pattern, there's the potential for that impact. It's more intuitive because people aren't used to traveling one way. I'm sure over the last 6 weeks you've seen a lot of people who are confused in the area. A lot of instances of wrong way driving probably take place in the area. When I was out there taking photos, I saw some people just openly violating it and driving the wrong way. Some of them I think were employees just trying to get to work. The cons to it, going back to that, is number one, you've got to undo what you've already done, take down all the signage and take things back to the way it was. And you're really back to that same point, which is pedestrian safety in the area, which I still contend, just as I did 2 years ago, that under the two-way traffic pattern with your existing right-of-way, pavement edge to pavement edge, you're going to have people walking in the street unless you take some type of an action. I think it was very prudent of the council to take the action to go to one-way traffic, because I think it did provide an opportunity to free up some of that pavement for pedestrians. I think that was a right move to make as far as being a good safety measure within the area. And I also stated here that with expected growth, future changes will be needed, because there's a lot of vacant property in the area, a lot of spaces that are available for development, especially commercial development. So traffic is only going to increase. I think pedestrian foot traffic is only going to increase with the success of what you hope is a very successful and growing waterfront overlay district. Traffic alternative number 2. For this alternative, I took a look at reversing your current one-way pattern, taking the traffic on Treadway and moving it westbound versus eastbound. And then taking, if you make that movement, you would have to then take the traffic on Bayview and make it southbound all the way to Cody Avenue. That would provide some right-of-way for the pedestrians, especially if you sign it correctly. I'll show you some of those treatments here toward the end of the presentation. It creates or maintains the gateway opportunity to the area on the north. You've kind of got the northern gateway there, And then you've got River Gulf Drive on the south side that also provides kind of a full access gateway to the WOD on the south side. The biggest issue with any of these, whenever you do go to one-way traffic, even as you have it currently existing, you've got a problematic intersection there at Cody, Old Post, and US 19. It's a three-way intersection that right now does not have a lot of traffic, or at least didn't before it's a one-way pattern. But now since Treadway is turned to one-way in the eastbound direction, it's forcing southbound traffic on Old Post all the way down to Cody and then taking that right. People traveling southbound on US 19, hanging that right onto Cody, it's not a real popular movement, and there's not a lot of traffic in that direction, but that is not a protected right turn. Those vehicles coming off there are coming off very fast, and if you've got people poking along Cody and Old Post at the little three-way stop sign there, they're moving slowly, vehicles coming in fast off US 19. So I would recommend, I'll hit upon it later, but if you're doing any of these one-way options, you really need to consider what you can do for vehicular safety there. Off the top of my head, without doing a traffic analysis, I would say restrict that right turn movement off of US 19. Anyone traveling south on 19 can either take a right onto Grand Boulevard or on River Gulf and get into the area just as easily. As I said, that's not a movement that's taking place that much right now, but it only takes one person flying through there very quickly and getting mixed up with what's going on at the Cody Avenue and Old Post Road intersection. All right, traffic alternative number 3 actually would be more long-term if you went to a full one-way pattern within that square of streets. I would recommend a counterclockwise motion of traffic there. Once again, it frees up the area for more pedestrian activity, makes a safer environment. With that, though, you still have the vehicular conflict that I just talked about at Cody and Old Post. It would require additional signage and striping because at each of those intersections, for instance, Cody and Bayview, you would have to put some type of a flaring of the intersection to make sure that those cars traveling northbound on Bayview were channeled to go eastbound on Cody. So with any of these, as you go to one way, you're actually doing some type of minor improvements at each of the intersections. Alternative 4 we looked at, turning the pattern the other way. What if those 4 roads worked in a clockwise fashion? That takes away the whole idea of kind of the gateway concept. It is just an extension of what you currently have, which is Treadway going eastbound. So that's doable also. For all of these, once you go to that situation, you will create a little bit of looping within the area and a little bit of extra driving, but once people get used to the pattern, whatever the venue or location they're trying to go to, they can plan their trip accordingly and either get into the area off of Grand or off of River Gulf. So, I hit the punchline here. So, really from a pure traffic planning situation and minimizing the impact in the area, my recommendation would be traffic alternative number 2, which was reversing the one-way pattern, really going in a westbound and then southbound direction. As I said, it carries forward some of the other impacts that exist within the Cody Old Post US 19. It'll really confuse the public more if all of a sudden they come back and everything's switched around, you're heading the other direction. So there's going to be some type of an education and adjustment campaign regardless. And you're going to have the business impact of coming in there and taking out the signs and reposting them and changing things. But if I were thinking about short-term improvement, that would be the short-term improvement that I would recommend. And then from a longer standpoint, especially as the area continues to develop, I would consider going to a full one-way pattern in a counterclockwise direction, I would, as I stated earlier, look to maybe remove the one-way, right turn on southbound US 19 onto Cody. I would work with the Florida Department of Transportation, see if they would allow that. Obviously, that being their facility. But if you request any type of a measure that you say is going to make it a safer environment, they'll support that for you, especially since that's a low-volume road. And as we can see there on the map, you've got two other points of entry just north and south. They're full access across 19, one signalized, one unsignalized. So I don't think that would be too much of an impact. As far as considerations, as we've talked about, everything you do takes money, and everything has an impact. And you're trying to make sure you minimize that impact in the short term and plan for the long term. Short term, going to that one-way configuration, as I stated, is I think a very prudent move on your part, because you're freeing up pavement for letting the pedestrians operate in there. Here's some examples. One of them in the Sarasota area. It's actually Saramar Road there. You see they just did some simple paint and striping where they've got pedestrians and bikes there. You see the one on the bottom is actually on Gulf Drive at Clearwater Beach, where once again they have someone operating within the pavement. And probably the other example is the plan view schematic over there, where you see people having a striped area. I would even recommend putting some type of deflectors or some of those plastic flanges that really demarcate it. But if you're talking about 15 to 18 feet of pavement and you're going to one-way traffic, that frees up enough space for the pedestrians to then have their avenue. Maybe long-term, you do look at acquiring some additional right-of-way and putting a separated sidewalk in the area. But for short term, if you're really concerned about pedestrian safety, I think your idea of going to one-way does make a lot of sense. Good news is, even if that area does develop and you get all those commercial uses in there, you're never going to have to go to widening roads in the area. You've got plenty of roadway capacity just with the 2 lanes, even if they go to a one-way configuration, because that's just because of the limited size of the area. So if you are having to purchase right-of-way in that area, it would be to put in pedestrian facilities. And the way you did it there on Bayview is perfect. You put it on the west side, minimizing the opportunity or the need for people to cross the road. And ultimately, the way to do it there on Treadway would be on the north side, as you saw in some of those photos I had on the south side, where you've got the business, the Pirate Bar. Those vehicles that pull in there, their back end of their vehicle is right on the pavement, so there's really no way to get in there. Oh, and there I am. That's who I am. As just to reiterate that, I'm going to put this graphic up here because it actually shows an aerial of some of the intersections of concern. One of them being the Cody Avenue, and one of them being what currently is at Grand. And you see at Grand, you do have the protected right turn lane there for vehicles coming southbound. So they're coming in there. And here's the location here at Cody. You see how close the intersection with Cody and Old Post is to US 19. So if cars are really zooming down US 19, making that right in there, you're really putting a high-speed vehicle into what's a low-speed intersection. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you for your patience. I get a little long-winded sometimes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to start with kind of a hypothetical, if I may. I think the one way, as you suggested, is the best way to go. But either way you go one way, the issue, as you said, was that intersection at 19 Cody and Old Post, that intersection there. One of the questions I had is if you noted when you did the traffic study, there was a one-way sign that was put on the edge of Cody Road by DOT, which was pointing southbound on 19. I didn't know if you were able to note that sign. The question that I had, number one, is can people, as it sits now with that sign, are they able to still take a left off of Cody onto Old Post and head up towards Grand, so they have the light to turn north.
Yes, I think the restriction is that that sign is there to illustrate the fact that there's no way to go across 19 to go northbound.
And it's a right-hand turn only.
Right turn only to go southbound on US 19. It's not a restriction to go northbound on Old Post.
And there's a follow-up question, because I spent some time with our chief of police, and I had the same safety concerns he did. And one of the concerns that he pointed out that I agree with him 100% is people taking a left off of Cody onto Old Post is going to be in conflict with people at a high speed coming off of 19 taking a right onto there.
Yes.
Do you think that the only way to combat that, regardless of which way the one-way is just to block the right-hand turn off of 19 onto Cody or Old Post right there?
Yes, that is what I would recommend.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea to go ahead and maintain the right turn off of Cody to go southbound onto US 19. I don't see a problem with that, but I would restrict people coming off of US 19 southbound. And as I mentioned several times here, that's one of my major concerns with the area. Another engineering point that I failed to mention in my presentation is obviously you have a very active and very attractive boat ramp in the area with a lot of trucks and trailers. And by going to a one-way pattern, depending upon where those boaters are arriving from, whether they're coming in on Grand, Cody, or River Gulf, they're having to make a series of lefts and right turns to get there. And if you go to a one-way pattern, you may be increasing the number of turns. So you definitely need to make sure that you maintain or are aware of any turning radius restrictions in that area. From what I can see, most of what's in there are what I would call shorter bed boat trailers and large pickup trucks. And probably before you would take any definitive action, I would do some type of a survey, a arrival survey in the area, and just have someone on say a Saturday or a time when you expect a lot of trucks coming into the area, just post people at all the intersections and see how many of those trailers are coming in from what direction. And knowing that there is the impact, if you make any of those streets one way, you may be making it more circuitous. I know when we were doing our analysis, we were going in and counting, we were saying, okay, if a truck's coming in from River Gulf and it needs to get to the boat ramp, how many rights and how many lefts is it going to take to get there, and trying to minimize that. But as long as your intersections, bearing in mind that, as I stated, a lot of times you're going to put some type of a channeling device in there to make it where people can't go the wrong way. You're going to force them to go right turn, for instance, as they're heading north on Bayview, right onto Cody. And if you put some of those delimiters in there or deflectors, making sure that you're maintaining a safe turning radius for the trucks with boat trailers, or else they're just going to run over all of them.
The other question that I wanted to ask you, and I didn't know if you took into consideration, is one of the things that we have the luxury in terms of our city, which we love all of this. And I didn't know if you took that into consideration with the traffic study, because one of the other discussions I had with Mr. Chief DeCanio was the issue of golf carts having to stay on city roads and off of 19 to make it through the loop. Hypothetically, if we had a golf cart that couldn't go on at 19 and we reversed the one way, you'd have to stop people to turn them at that intersection, which is at 19 Cody and Old Post, so that the golf carts could head back northbound at Old Post. Is that?
Yes, you would be, and that's kind of the issue not only with golf carts but all vehicles, is you would be forcing more usage at that intersection. But given the profile of the vehicle, be it a regular vehicle or a golf cart, because you're primarily looking at low speed, low traffic roadways, I think you'd have very safe conditions for the golf carts, and also they have much more maneuverability to even negotiate some of those intersections that I was talking about.
And along with that, because I saw that Cody Road is striped right there. It's yellow striped for two-way traffic. Would you recommend that Cody stay that way regardless of which way the one-way goes?
No, I think I would go ahead and, whenever you go to a full, if you go to a full one-way for the entire square, I would make all four of them one-way. It doesn't have to, but I would recommend that.
So you would have Cody going northbound one way off of, or
Cody going eastbound.
eastbound?
Mhm.
And then what about Old Post coming across?
So Old Post would go northbound if you go to that counterclockwise.
only.
Clockwise rotation, exactly.
And that
And
would
one of the reasons I feel that way about Cody is we observe that there, whenever the casino boat goes out, there are some folks who are walking on Cody Road also. And also there is we saw some people waiting for a bus. There's a transit stop right in that area on US 19. So you are getting some pedestrian traffic on Cody, so it's no wider than the other roads in the area. So I think once again, you need to make some type of an accommodation for pedestrians there. Looks like on Cody you do have a little bit more opportunity to maybe purchase some right-of-way, but Treadway you're really kind of locked in there.
So would you say that even though I know for short term, just making one way on Treadway, would it still be safer to make one way, in your opinion, the whole loop, which would be Cody and Old Post around?
I think probably long-term, short-term, I don't think there would be a difference if you bit the bullet and did the entire area. I think if you did, you would be taking on more of a burden for signage, striping, whatever pedestrian treatments you put in there. I think that the major immediate pressure right now is on Treadway and Bayview. That's one of the reasons why I kind of put a phasing in there, is because I think your major issue right now is how to handle Treadway, which is what you did address.
At this time, I wanted to pass questions on to the rest of the council.
One of the things I was going to say, I don't think the short term, we have a hard enough time changing traffic patterns for people. If we're going to do it, I would think we'd want to do the whole thing at one time, because as you saw, we changed the traffic pattern and it's already been 2 months and we still have people going the wrong way on the road. So the short term, I don't think is a real fix. I think we go to make it one way the whole way and we don't have to change it again would be the way I would go.
Any other comments or questions?
Two questions. If, in your recommendation, I know you haven't had necessarily had an opportunity to study it completely, but if we were to go make Cody one way towards 19 eastbound, would knowing all the boat traffic that we have, or the boat and trailer traffic, would it be your initial recommendation, I'll say, that also possibly be a 2-lane one-way, so you are able to handle the right-hand southbound traffic to 19? So you're getting people out and dumping people out to 19 a lot easier? Or you see what I'm saying? Because right now we're going to have people trying to make a right-hand turn onto 19 South. You're also going to have to have people make a left-hand turn onto Old Post northbound.
I see.
And
what
that's
you
going you're going to have a backup coming down Cody, and that's not a very long road to begin with, especially once you start introducing truck and trailer traffic to it. So I understand. One is a comment. I think the 4-way one-way is the best way to go initially, but I would not do it unless we can shut down the right-hand turn off of 19 onto Cody, or else we're going to have a major accident very quickly, likely. And following up on that comment, what is the approximate time that DOT usually takes to review and implement such a change? Round numbers, I mean.
I'm not certain, but I would say you'd have to, I think you're probably looking almost a 3 to 6 month time frame to actually get it done. But that was going to be my comment to you is whatever action you decide, you need to start that coordination with FDOT and not put your plan into action until you get agreement from them that they can go in and they will make that move. And I like your idea about Cody being eastbound, and if you've got enough room there, go ahead. As you mentioned, you've already got the yellow striping in there. Go ahead and make it where the right lane is right turn only onto 19 southbound, and the left lane forces you up Old
And
Post.
then if you have to do additional sidewalk on the side, because we want to do, we're going to, in this entire area, we're going to want to do walkways, sidewalks,
Correct.
make it really open and friendly to,
Correct.
pedestrians. So that is the only one where we may want to really look at if we need to purchase property or do something above and beyond just striping off and designating that pedestrian only. That's the only road that we really want to look at. But that would be a 2-lane, one left, one right, and then a sidewalk as well.
Because I think that would be the easiest way for the, I'd have to kind of look at it, but you would have the boat trailers coming out of the park, taking a right, and then having to take an immediate left onto Cody, and then getting the right lane to go south on 19, if that was their preferred movement to get out.
Or they go left and go back on the Old Post to Grant.
They could do that also.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I had is when we're dealing with trying to block traffic turning onto Cody from 19, that right-hand turn, is that something that the city would bear the cost in your experience, or is that something that the state or DOT would potentially pay for, you know?
Not sure from my experience. My firm is the safety consultant for FDOT District 7, so I have someone right down the hall from me who can answer a couple of these questions you've asked me today, as far as timeline, but also cost. But I know that FDOT does have safety funding, and that's probably a situation where, obviously being their roadway, they would want to take the lead on that, and I would think that it would be very good idea to ask them if they would support and fund that for you. Once again, from the safety angle.
The modifications to that intersection, though, would be relatively minor, though. To
Correct.
accommodate that. We're
You got-
not looking at,
Put some ballards in there.
yeah, we're not looking at a substantial cost either way.
Correct, and
As a
you got a
deal
pretty
breaker.
big turning radius there and a little bit of throat coming off of US 19. So if you really closed off the right turn off 19, you've got enough room there to, I think, easily for the vehicles to negotiate the left turn off of Cody north onto Old Post, and you'd have enough room for them to align themselves to go southbound on 19 also. But I think your critical timeline is really just initiating that conversation with FDOT and seeing if it's viable to make that restriction on 19 southbound.
And let's say, worst case scenario, DOT says no, which I think is unlikely, but let's say they say no for some reason and they are set that we cannot modify that intersection for whatever reason. Would your recommendation then still be proceed with alternative number 2? In this case, reverse the flow on Treadway, even if we have to keep Cody a 2-way street and keep that intersection as it is?
Yes, I would still recommend reversing it, because you're already putting, even with the current configuration, you're already putting additional pressure on that intersection, because now that the motorists can't turn right, or not supposed to, turn right onto Treadway, they're being forced down Old Post. So you already got an increased movement Old Post down to Cody. So the intersection under your current configuration is already having a lot more traffic than it has in the past.
So your recommendation right now would probably be the best course of action would be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I will, proceed with alternative number 2, and if also proceed if we want to eventually establish alternative number 3, which I think I have it right. 4. Which one is it? 4, I'm sorry.
No,
it's 3.
Yeah, two
It's 3. It's 2 and
recommended, 3 would be the
2 and 3 are the
full
preferred
thing.
ways to go.
Mhm.
So we're probably best off doing number 2 right away. And while we are applying to DOT or speaking to DOT for an eventual implementation of number 3, at least we have number 2 in place as far as we would want to take it.
Exactly. I would be, I really don't know. If I would approach FDOT first and hope that they're amenable to helping you out, explain the situation, safety concern. If they look like they're agreeable to it and moving forward, and it's something that they would support, that they would fund, I would say definitely move ahead with number 2 and number 3 as quickly as possible. Regardless, however, if FDOT does not look like they want to consider that, you'd need to measure the impact of the current traffic configuration and the traffic configuration you would have with alternative 2, which is the 2 legs of the square, and consider that impact, because I do think you're going to see an increase in crashes at that location, and it's not going to be pretty.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you on that note, because of your situation in terms of being an expert, the traffic coming southbound on 19 where that turn is there, do you see any effect on traffic coming down 19? Because that may be one of DOT's considerations, whether or not it's going to affect the traffic flow on 19 if we change whether or not they can take a right-hand turn there.
Right. Actually, what they'll probably do is similar to the work that we did. I wish I brought my study from 2 years ago when we did counts at that location, because we have the counts, and we also pulled the crash records at that time. We pulled, I believe, a 5-year crash history at that location. So they'll do the same thing with their analysis. They'll come out and count how many people are making that right, which during the PM peak was less than 10, I believe. There weren't a lot. It's not a very high movement because it's not a safe movement, and people would rather turn at the signal up at Grand. So they would come in and take a look at the traffic, they would look at the turning movements, and they would take a look at any crash history in the area, and if it confirmed what we're speculating, and discuss with them the change in the pattern that you've already initiated, as well as what you're considering, and that should be enough information, I believe, for them to take action and support you. But I don't think, as far as they would not say, I can't speak for them. I speak for them sometimes.
Just in your experience.
But in my experience, there is not enough traffic turning right at Cody Road southbound on US 19 to where they would have any concern at all about closing that.
If I might, Mayor? Just to relieve council's mind, we have reserved quite a bit of signage and equipment for any alternative with respect to traffic pattern. That's already set aside, and any other changes are minimals with respect to the cost relates, because it's basically signage and painting, and we'll address the traffic, pedestrian traffic, because that's what we're really concerned about, the safety issue.
Here's one concern I really have, and he actually had a very good picture of it. If we do go and change flows or whatever the case may be, we should really set aside funds to stripe a proper walkway on the street, so people at least then have an indication of where they should walk instead of one on each side of the street as they were walking down. And at least start to try and enforce it. We may not have the ability to put in sidewalks right away, but let's at least, and please correct me if I'm out of line in my speaking, at least get some sort of pedestrian walkway established so people can try to stay on one side of the road instead of one on each side as we're walking through there.
And I was going to make a point, and I was going to ask, since we have an expert here, I had the same thought, but when you look down Treadway towards Hooters, you have a parking lot which is right on the road, which is the Pirate Bar. So is it your recommendation, if we did that we would stripe the opposite side of the road so they're not, pedestrian traffic's not in the middle of traffic that's backing out and going down Treadway? Is that the way you would do it?
Yes, I would recommend you do it on a north side treatment. So obviously if it's on pavement right now, maybe long-term sidewalk, but that would tie in and be a continuation of the sidewalk that currently exists on the west side of Old Post south as you're coming by Gildogs, and also the sidewalk you have on the west side of Bayview, right in front of Hooters, going down to Whiskey Joe's and to Catches. So it would be a perfect continuation. The only folks who would be left out there would be, there is on the southwest corner of Old Post and Treadway, there is a parcel of land which is currently used for overflow parking for Whiskey Joe's. And those folks would have to find some way to get across the road to the striped conveyance. So they would probably cross right there at Old Post and Treadway.
You could put a
just cross
crosswalk right
there.
across, and then that would.
Exactly.
But if they're parking in Whiskey Joe's lot, wouldn't they walk the other way and then take a right on?
We're talking about Treadway.
Treadway lot.
Right, but it's on the corner of,
He's saying you'd have to walk across
Yeah, you'd have to-
Treadway get into the path to walk on the north
Yeah, you'd
side.
have to walk across the road in order to get into the path to walk down south safely.
for that, but I'm suggesting that if those people are going to Whiskey Joe's, wouldn't they walk down Old Post and then down Cody to Whiskey Joe's, which is right there?
They may do that right now, but I don't see you getting the treatments in there that quickly to protect them, and that's a much more narrow corridor, and there's a lot of
On that
growth
road, okay.
and not a lot of room on the edge of pavement. So until you actually can get that treatment in place, at least for the short term, I would recommend that you guide the pedestrians to the north side of Treadway to go.
Because that's a longer walk for them.
It's not a lot longer. It's not much. It's also more scenic. There's not much to see down that section of Old Post.
So you just put the crosswalk right there, as Mr. McCleary was saying?
Mm-hmm.
You also already have the sidewalks running in front of Hooters and everything too, to get Whiskey Joe's.
Mr. Mayor, before you go any further,
Yes.
the research I've done on Treadway, that's a right-of-way of convenience. That road is owned by Whiskey Joe, the Pirate Bar, and Gill Dogs. The city does not own that road.
On Treadway.
Treadway is owned by the property owners on both sides.
Well, you're a buzzkill. How did we put it in one way?
I've spoken about that a couple of times. What I found on that road and every map we've got here shows a right-of-way of convenience. It's not owned by the city.
Well, I think that's just a matter of having a conversation with the business owners of the
Well,
Pirate Bar.
And who's been maintaining it for the last 20 years?
The property corner for Gill Dogs, if you go to the intersection of Old Post and Treadway, where the dirt stops, 19 feet into the road is his property corner. He's almost to the parking lot for Whiskey Joe's. So now you're gonna deal with the property owners to see how we can get through there to do this.
I'm certain we refer that issue to our city attorney, and I'm sure we can resolve that issue. I don't see it as an issue.
But we'll have those same discussions, because sometimes if we're gonna wanna build a sidewalk over there, you're gonna have the discussion with those folks anyway, so.
The owner of Gill Dogs,
I would imagine they'll be open to this type of improvement for their business, regardless.
they've approached the city, they've approached me, actually the owner, about putting sidewalks from the park down Old Post, down Treadway, at his cost, and then giving it to the section along Old Post and just giving it back to the city for maintenance.
Okay.
At this time, I know that Chief DeCanio had a lot of work that he put into this. Did you have any questions or concerns based on some of the discussion and having the expert here?
No, I think the pattern number 2 is the wise way to go, because if you go westbound on the Treadway, there's no sidewalks there. Once you get to the intersection of Bayview, that's where the sidewalks come in. So you can use that one way, and it'll be friendly to pedestrians. Once you get to Bayview, then you have your sidewalk. So the pattern number 2 is the one that I like. The only concern is the one-way sign that you said on Cody. If we can really make the left there to go back up Old Post. And like you said, Mr. Mayor, if this is too restrictive to the golf carts, we can't take them onto US 19. So that would be the other problem. But pattern number 2 seems to be doable.
They'd have to turn on the Old Post, but that's where I think that the challenge would be for law enforcement is that intersection with people until 19's changed where you can't turn off there.
Correct.
If that's what we try and do. I think that you guys would have your hands full on busy nights at that intersection.
Yeah, the only thing, like we said, is it's the one-way sign on Cody that concerns me. is it restricting them from turning left on to Old Post?
That's a 19. That's for US 19.
We can get a ruling from the DOT, and don't they usually weigh in?
Well,
if you request a
FDOT would not restrict a movement on unless they consider that entire intersection their intersection. But they would not restrict a left turn movement from a city road to a city road, assuming the city owns it.
So that's a decision that we can make, is whether or not.
Right.
So that's going to be up to our city.
Well, if they do own it, they better fix their intersection.
That's right.
I'd also like to remind council that the city, and of course with council's blessing, has and continues to consider addressing sidewalks, signage, and lighting as part of the WOD. And in fact, you allocated additional $200,000 towards the WOD area total reconstruction. So the new sidewalks, changes, modifications, or potential acquisition is all on the table for this city once you decide to move forward, obviously, or at least in my mind, with option 2 at this time.
The way I see it, this is a two-phase project.
Yes, sir.
First phase is implement what is alternative number 2 as quickly as feasible with striping for pedestrian traffic, so we have some people walking safely on the road on one side of the road instead of the entire road. Fix the signage for both Treadway and part of Bayview. And then the second phase is the much larger one, which would be what we were speaking towards, the sidewalks, the lighting, and possibly a full implementation of alternative number 3. Once we can coordinate with FDOT the closing of that 3-way intersection, that is a big concern, and we figure out who actually owns Treadway, and then make it a full 2-phase project.
No, I agree with that as well. The only other question that I had, is there anything that the city should do short-term, in your opinion, in terms of signage at that intersection where people are still going to be turning off 19 onto Cody? Is there anything that the city should do there to hopefully reduce any issues and make it safer? Whether it's trimming so visibility is better if there's any trees or shrubbage, which I don't think there was much just from looking at it, and or any signage, just to let people know about the intersection.
You could possibly post a sign there, and I don't know if one currently exists as you're traveling south on the Old Post, but you could put a warning sign up that says, beware, watch for traffic from 19 or something like that. There you could say, I don't know exactly how you would word that, but as the motorist is coming southbound, because it's almost a blindside look, if they got forced south on Old Post to Cody because they couldn't turn right on Treadway, they're looking to make that right to hit westbound on Cody, and the car from 19 is going to be zipping onto from their left. So they're kind of going to be blindsided.
Could you force traffic coming down Old Post to take a right there onto Cody and not onto 19 to alleviate that issue? Just short term until that's closed.
Possibly you could say a right turn only at that location.
Just until it's switched around.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be prudent in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, there are some folks who might be looking to make that movement. As I noted earlier, there are many other options to get onto 19 southbound. Okay. If you go up to Grand, or if you work your way south to River Gulf, that are much more protected. I don't like that intersection at 19 at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, I go out that way every day, and coming off of 19, very few cars actually are coming off 19 on that. The biggest problem we have is you have the full stop at Old Post. Like you said, you have the two intersections almost tying together. The stop sign on Cody is 100 feet from 19, so everybody runs right through the stop sign and stops at 19. So I'm every morning, you sit there, you go to pull out, and they go right past it and stop at 19. So I don't see traffic coming in as a big problem at this point. It's very light.
The grow appreciably in the next 6 months, to be honest with you, by the time, 6 to 12 months, by the time we implement them.
Let's see if there's any further discussion or questions. And the only person that hasn't really said anything, Councilwoman Searles, or anything you'd like to add, or any questions?
Well, I don't think there's anything we can do about the northbound on 19. The people that are coming into the area that are wanting to go home and go northbound, they've got to come out at Grand or come all the way down Old Post to Ridge and come to the light that direction. It's just an awkward place to be. And that little intersection right there, are you sure there's enough turning radius for these boats with their trailers? To get from Coty to Old Post?
Cody to go left on Old Post, go north.
We didn't do a measurement and an engineering analysis on that. You may want to have someone do an observation, just post someone right there at the entrance to the parking area for the boat ramp, and do a quick little count of how many people are coming from the north and how many people are coming from the south. And you know if you're at that vantage point, you can tell if any of them are coming in Cody, and you can tell the ones that are coming south on Bayview, they're coming off of Grand, and if they're north, they're coming off of River Gulf. So you get a little bit of a census of exactly where the traffic is arriving from, and count the people going out and see where they're going. And based upon that, you can surmise if they're avoiding any intersections in the area. I have a feeling that they're probably making full use of all the entrances, which means you're probably pretty equal as far as radius at all those intersections, and they're okay. But since I didn't measure it, I can't, from an engineering standpoint, say it's clear from all directions.
I've just never seen anybody come that direction and try on that particular intersection to take a boat around it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my ways out to go to southbound too, so I'm down there quite often.
Any other questions, or at this time are we going to open it for any potential motions?
On the two-way, you're going from right lane to left lane, so the boat should be able to go around that corner. I'm just thinking, if we do implement option 2 right away, like Jenny says, we don't want to.
Typically, though, if you're going up Cody to make a left on Old Post, you're on the right-hand side, so you have more room to swing. If
Exactly.
you swing it over to the left,
Exactly.
it's going to narrow.
The only part we'd have to do is when we implement, if we do on the
Radius that
full
corner.
3 and do the 2 lanes where you have a right turn and a left turn, but that would require a full engineering study anyway, for the sidewalks and everything else for us to implement, and then we can verify it.
The way I see it, if we do the alternative 2, we're going to find out about that intersection fairly quickly, because that's the only way they're going to be able to come out to go north. So we'll find out about that intersection rather quickly on that.
Any other questions or comments from council? We'll get to the general public here in a minute, if that's okay.
I do, sir. Just listening, and I've run this area before, to do number 3. The problem is everybody's looking at trying to get out. If we do shut Cody Road down, which would start out would probably be the nice yellow, flares, and then we could eventually go to concrete when people learn that you can't do it. Instead of turning Cody into a 2-way turn, leave it a 1-way. You either do right or left, and then you can appropriate your sidewalk, your pedestrian with the painting. If your road's 15 foot long, you're taking 5 feet off of it, you still have a 10-foot circle. If you only having 10 people come in and out of that intersection of Cody at 19, you're not going to have a backup. So everybody will go to Old Post. You'll have that room to turn, because you don't have to close the entire intersection down from Old Post, Cody to 19. You just close down a section of it where the people can't turn in from southbound. The boaters, if you get one of the bigger boats, they can actually go into that intersection deep and swing. I mean, I don't think, I mean, the biggest problem you'd have right now out there would be Cisco. And Cisco probably does those turns a whole bunch of times, and they've got a 32-foot trailer. And they're making those turns every day because they go to Catches, they go to Whiskey Joe's, they go to Hooters, they go to Gill Dogs, and they go to Pirate Bar. So you have a single axle tractor, sometimes a dual axle tractor, and a 32-foot trailer run through there. So, you know, I don't think they're running over people or cars as of right now, so I think that's something to just look at.
Ms. Tom, were there any motions?
Motion to implement alternative number 2, pending investigation on implementation of alternate number 3. I'm not sure the right way to phrase this, but. Yep. Move ahead with FDOT for the full alternative number 3.
At this time, it would be cleaner just to say that we want to go with option 2 and then just leave option 3 open for later, because I think we'd have to bring it to council anyway for the motion. Yes, yeah, to make it cleaner for us, please.
I definitely want to keep alternative number 3 rolling, so.
Council has full authority over the street, so this is your power. Remember, you can make a motion. You can come back next meeting or as it's going down the path and make another motion. You understand me? You're in full control of these situations, so you're not locked in. You can change. So it's not like you need to go as far as you want, you know. So
Motion to implement alternative number 2.
Second.
Before we vote, I saw that there was hands from the public. And if I may call, I saw a hand, it was Mr. Mueller. I wanted to invite you to the podium for comment, and then if there's any other comments, I wanted to hear that before we vote.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. I'm not sure you guys are giving consideration to the boat trailer traffic in the boat ramp area. If you're going to be entering that from the north end, making the loop, an individual backs his boat in, drops the boat, comes out. If he doesn't find a spot there, he can't exit back around if there's a spot there, or even cross the street into the boat parking at the bait shop. So he's going to have to make a loop around and come back around. I mean, just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other comments or concerns from the public? Seeing no hands, was there any other discussion amongst council before we vote? Hearing no discussion at this time, I think it's going to be put to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, I wanted to move on to item 4 on council business.
I want to thank Mr. Kersey.
What's it?
I want to thank Mr. Kersey.
Yeah, go on.
Mr. Kersey, I'd like to express our appreciation for your work and your time. Thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for your hard work. All right. Item number 4, we're going to go back to, it looks like reading for ordinance regarding future land use map amendment for the 2RJ investment corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the 2 ordinances to amend the FLUME, the future land use map. These are the second and final reading by title only. Ordinance number 20-677, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, for an amendment to the City of Port Richey Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map by changing the land use category for property generally known as 5867 Sunglow Avenue, approximately 0.58 acres, further described herein, and in attached exhibits providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Ordinance number 20-678, second and final reading by title only. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, for an amendment to the City of Port Richey Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map by changing the land use category for property generally known as 8151 Leo Kidd Avenue, approximately 0.93 acres, further described herein and in attached exhibits, providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 20-678.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item up for council business are the ordinances regarding the rezoning by 2RJ Investments Incorporated.
This is the second and final reading of the rezone, which I'll do by title only, of the same two parcels. Second and final reading of ordinance number 20-679, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, rezoning property described as 5857 Sunglow, also known as parcel number 29-2516-0100-00000-0120, Port Richey, Florida, from R2 to C3, approximately 0.58 acres, further described herein and in attached exhibits, providing for publication, providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 20-679.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is second and final reading by title only, ordinance number 20-680, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, rezoning property described as 8151 Leo Kidd Avenue, also known as parcel number 29-2516-0100-0160, Port Richey, Florida, from R2 to C3, approximately 0.93 acres, further described herein and in attached exhibits, providing for publication, providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve 20-680.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
The next item, and the last item for council business, is going to be the appointment of members to boards and committees. For this, I was going to pass it over to Mr. Lupo.
For City Council consideration is the appointment of a new member to the Citizens Advisory Committee, Lex Kirst. Action requested City Council action as deemed appropriate.
I was going to open for either motion or discussion.
Motion to approve Lex Kirst, Citizens Advisory Committee.
Discussion. I would like to discuss it.
And I was going to pass the down to you, Mr. Earl.
This lady, I have asked several people if they knew who this lady is, because she has not attended any of the CAC meetings that I've known before. It's wonderful that she has an interest in joining us and to be part of this, but she's also a snowbird. So she's not here for the full amount of the year, and the activities that the CAC has been involved in, it's been pretty significant. And I personally feel that this woman should come and join us, see what she can do to contribute to the committee, and see if this is really along the line of what she would like to do if she chooses to become a full-time resident here in Port Richey. That's the only objection that I have to it.
I would agree that that's our most active board, and it's year-round. So I understand the concern. I don't think I've ever recall meeting this particular person, so I don't really have any comment either way there. And the question really becomes whether or not we want to wait and appoint someone who's here full-time, as the meetings go year-round, as you stated.
There's also a position for a liaison or an alternate.
That's the council.
Citizen Advisory is a vacancy, a full-time vacancy, and then there's an alternate vacancy.
Council liaison vacancy? She would be council. Okay.
Mr. McClary, any comment?
I kind of agree that, if she is relatively unknown and a snowbird, that, is it something that we, isn't it something that she should investigate further or come to some of the events or something of that nature prior to joining the board in and of itself?
What I would suggest is maybe tabling this to see if she becomes involved, and then we can just readdress it if that happens.
I agree.
I can withdraw my motion. With the second. It wasn't.
Okay, so the motion dies with that, unless there's any question or comment. And I guess before I close it, in all fairness, with this type of issue, does anyone from the general public want to speak? Okay. With that, we'll close item 6, which is our last item for council business, which moves us on to old business. I'd like to start to my left at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things. The first one is directed for the chief. No, not that easy. Well, they're easy. Just an update on CAT. I know we're getting very close to getting that up and running. We're waiting for a few inputs.
Yeah, the county, to save us money, the county has taken on a lot of the programming. So the glitch that we had talked about a couple of meetings ago, that's been rectified, and now what they're doing is they're putting in what they call nature codes, and there's about 4,000 nature codes, and that's the nature of the call. And that's what they work on. So hopefully, it's just waiting on the county, and we're not paying them, so they're doing us a favor. So I can't push them, but it's on track. We'll be there.
Okay, and on this directed to you also is the current purchase, the PD car purchase that we have talked about that, and I've talked with Mr. Lupo about that, so I guess we're moving in the right direction on that. The second item, which we kind of addressed, was the status of the Ritchie Road extension, and that's still moving forward as far as I know.
Yes, it is, sir.
Our resubmission to the county and our performance review, like Mr. Mueller said.
We did, in fact, resubmit our application to the county. We've indicated to the county about the additional $200,000, and we're waiting for their response.
All right, and then the last item I have, I understand that the Kaiser property is that a dead deal at this point?
We have not been officially notified by Kaiser. We've worked with Kaiser many different times and occasions. We work as best as prudently as possible. We have not been officially notified by the property owner, other than what he has evidently posted in his Facebook page.
That's what I was going off of.
Right, but we have no official notification from anyone at this point in time, no additional contact with the building department.
If I could comment, because I met with the property owner over the weekend to discuss some of these issues. And I think the plan was to see whether or not they could come to terms with a potential extension on the contract. That way, because Newport Ritchie and their workings with Kaiser aren't really a done deal yet. So I think Kaiser was trying to keep their contract and just have it extended here and see whether or not they could work out whatever they were going to work out in Newport Ritchie. So there were some talks about a 30-day extension. And I haven't followed up yet, but I know that was the discussion, I think, for the property owner.
Well, Newport Ritchie's giving away the house, it sounds like, on that property to Kaiser with incentives. But my other thing I wanted to get to is if this is a done deal, maybe the city should, once again, talk to the owner in relation to that property for our obvious parking issues.
We'd be more than happy to do that. We have extended every possible courtesy to the developer. We have met with him on several occasions. We've met with his staff. We've met with his engineering. This city council, by virtue of the ordinance changes that you've passed, have acquiesced to their presentation. We have done everything possible. We have followed the law, and we will continue to work with Kaiser, hopefully, to return back to our community. If not, I, as the city manager, wish them every possible luck.
Well, it's unfortunate about the Kaiser incident that is going on right now. We can only hope for the best for the city and for Newport Richey at the same time. One of the things that I have noticed that in some of the comments that I have been watching, people don't understand that the city of Port Richey does not own the property in the WOD. That is owned by individuals who have a right to develop that property in the way that they see fit. The city sits by and makes sure that they follow the rules. Otherwise, they can put whatever they want to. If he wants to put a roller skating rink on that trailer park, he can do so because it would just have to be done in compliance to our laws. We do not choose what a person wants to do with their property. And for some unknown reason, people seem to think the city of Port Richey has the right to determine what's going in there, and that's not true. So when people are thinking about these things and they're hearing from the owners and they're hearing from the city, remember that we do not own the property in the WOD. We can't turn it into a parking lot. We can't do anything with it unless the person that owns it chooses to do so. I'd just like to remind people of that. So thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple items up that I wanted to discuss. The first, I wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions with Chief DeCanio, if I may. I know the situation with the cars is rough right now, and it's from probably previous administrations not budgeting enough money for cars, and I think that's where we're at, if that's not a fair statement. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is we did purchase 2 vehicles that I think still have some life left in them and are outfitted for the most part from Brooksville, those 2 squad cars. Are those able to be stickered and put into service? And is there anything that we need to do to potentially put those cars into service so that the police department may have a couple extra vehicles, at least in the short term, until we deal with this year's budget and getting cars?
Well, there's a couple of dynamics. One of them was that when I came here, the staff wasn't full. They were letting the spots through attrition go away. So we finally filled all the spots that we used to have. Therefore, the cars are now being used.
Right.
So, right, when I first got here, there were plenty of cars. Anybody could have took any car. But the spare cars now have been pushed into service. So the spare cars are now running 12 hours, 24 hours a day. The 2 Brooksville cars, one of them's out being serviced. There was a few little things that were wrong with it that I wasn't aware of. What we did was we put the PD logos on there in an effort to save some money. We didn't letter the whole car. That's about $400 a car. So for $50 a car, we put the logos on there. If that's something that we want to go ahead and explore later on, we can do that. But it's about $400 a car. So the Brooksville cars are viable spares. The other ones that we've pushed around for a while, they're starting to their life cycle's pretty well over with. Most of the Dodges and a couple of those, the Crown Vics, have well over 100,000 miles on them.
I guess the question I'm getting at, are those 2 cars, do they have a lot more life than some of the older cars that are?
Yes, they will. We'll probably retain those as spares once we get the new cars in and start to get rid of the Dodges. Ideally, we'd like to get rid of all the Dodges. We spent $64,000 last year in repairs. Not all the Dodges, but the budget, what we spent last year in vehicle repairs was over $64,000.
And my comment to you was, I think the cars look fantastic, the newer ones that we have, and the striping, but I think the striping that we have on our vehicles serve a great safety purpose at night because they're dark cars, but you can see them from a long distance, the way that the stripes are on the cars.
They're reflective. That we made sure
Correct.
that we made
So
sure
that's
of that.
why I was
yes,
asking
yes.
about the striping on the Brooksville cars, if we can put them into service, more for a safety issue, if nothing else, so people can see the cars from.
Yeah, we can restripe them and put the new pattern, the new pattern on it. We can do that.
Okay. I was just asking. I wasn't suggesting that had to be done. I didn't know if it was feasible or not, or if the cars were worthwhile to even do it.
Yeah, they'll probably outlast the Dodges and the other Crown Vics that we have. They're at most of them are at the end of the life cycle.
Okay. It was just a question that I had.
Yeah, I can get estimates for that and get it done. That's not a problem.
Okay. The other question that I had is I know that the county at some point, I believe, donated some computers. And that was in conjunction with some of the new CAD system and programs that we're having. Are we able to utilize those computers yet, or are they out of service?
No, they're still not used. There's 22 of them, and we can't use them on our old system. The county doesn't want to put the old system into those computers because they're worried about corrupting the files that would later be, well, later on we would put the new system in there, and they're worried about bad data, so we can't really use those yet.
Okay, so those are out of service until we get
Go
the CAD
live,
system
yes.
and everything else is online?
Correct.
Okay, that was a question that I had. I appreciate that. The other comment I had was on the Kaiser deal. And I know that when I was talking to property owner involved, he would probably be the same person that we're talking about for sidewalks and other things that need to be done, because he does own a lot of the property. But I think realistically, looking at that waterfront, the WOD district, whatever goes in there, whatever kind of business, company, whatever goes in there, parking is going to still be one of the issues that we're going to have to address. And one of the things I was just going to put out there is whether or not the city would ever want to look into some kind of joint venture with the property owner at some point for parking, so it can be utilized for city purposes as well as whatever private.
That was the comment I made if the Kaiser deal falls apart.
And then the other issue is Whiskey Joe has the same problem because the parking lot they have is completely kind of failed at this point because it wasn't done properly from what I can tell. And whether or not that they would be interested as well, because I think given the limited amount of space that we have in that area, that seems like the most logical place to put parking. So that was just one of the comments that I wanted to make, to kind of keep an open mind to see if the Kaiser deal falls through, what actions that we want to take, if any, to deal with the parking issues and whether or not we want to explore something like that. And that's all I had for old business.
I have two quick items. One, the grant status with the county. Is there a hearing date that we're looking towards where they're actually going to review our application, or?
We submitted our reapplication to them. We made the changes that council suggested, and their staff has been contacting us, asking specific questions. We've been responding to that, and we're still waiting for their response. I don't know whether their staff has completed their analysis.
Because my main concern is we are up against the October deadline of this year. Even if the, at that point, we still have to rebid out the package, and the work has to be completed prior to the October expiration of permitting, if I'm correct on that. So we are up against a deadline here that the county has to either say yay or nay. If they wait until March or April, it doesn't even matter if they say yay or nay, we're not going to get it done in time.
That may be a strategy on their part. But what I can tell you is that we have submitted the information to them. We have been providing additional information to their staff, and we've been told that they'll contact us.
So there's no hearing that we're gearing towards, or?
We haven't heard from their staff to say, we suggest these changes, we don't suggest these changes. We'll give you a date to come before. We haven't had any response.
Okay.
And if I can comment on that real quickly, I did get a call from a couple different news reporters this prior week asking specifically that status. And I think they were under the impression that the city hadn't done anything. So I kind of corrected that misconception, not only that we had talked about at the council, that the city's put together a package and submitted it, but the other thing I pointed out to just the meeting when I spoke to them is that there's been open communication. I know that Mr. Lupo and Jocelyn met with some of the county officials about presenting the package, putting it together, and answering any questions. So it looks like from our end, there's been open lines of communication. We've put together the package and in essence done everything we're supposed to do. So those were the questions I think that were directed at me based on that issue, and that was kind of the response on where we're at.
Foolish question, but are they aware of the deadline that we are up against with the permit expiration?
It has been mentioned several times by Commissioner Mariano in his discussions, by Mr. Curtis Franklin and their organization.
Second part is, I brought this up several months ago regarding the dredging committee. I believe we tabled it prior to the election as we were trying to get that sorted out. And perhaps we want to start thinking about the dredging committee where we can bring in our citizens, see if they can identify areas and paths for dredging, including sources, alternative sources of funding, since the county doesn't seem very responsive to their grant proposal. And if our citizens really want to have their areas dredged, let's work with our citizens and with the committee and put together a plan for dredging and ultimately see what those sources of funding are. Because the city in and of itself can probably not afford to dredge all of the canals that are out there. So there has to be alternative sources of funding. And it is apparent, at least at this point, that the county isn't that receptive to solely paying for it from grants that are available. So I think perhaps in future meetings we should think about putting together a committee and seeing what we can do for dredging, if that is in fact the direction that our citizens want to take.
And I agree with that statement, but I think really the discussions are going to be mainly focused on funding, which is what you're talking about, because I think before it was focused on what we can do and how we can do it and not the funding. But I think the funding should have been the first discussion back then, and that's where we should start now.
If I might provide some additional information to council, the Port Authority meeting, the Port Authority Committee has met. They're speaking to these issues. In fact, I have a meeting with its chairman, Mr. Rolfe, this coming week at his time to discuss those issues and to have them come before council to present their ideas, which I'm sure includes the dredging issues.